I'm sorry. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted everyone to be aware, Mr. Wetzel is the author of an application which is up for historic landmark with the Historic Preservation Review Board. And that application is going to be heard by the Historic Preservation Review Board panel in October. What we wanted to do, as in any entity that's formally presented to any government agency, the ANC can weigh in on that and submit comments. But we, of course, want to vet it before the community so that Mr. Wetzel can speak about that application, and then there are any Q&As, but so that the ANC can actually do a resolution so that we can actually submit comments about the application. All of this has to be done in a regular public meeting. And so that's why we asked Mr. Wetzel to be here, so that we can hear from him if he wants to do some background and tell us about the application and what precipitated you to do it, and explain what the actual property is, and a little bit of the, I just read the application, so I'm just putting it out there. So this is Mr. Hayden Wetzel. Please come on.
Yeah, my name is Hayden Wetzel. I live in the neighborhood here, and on Irving Street, and the Roundhouse is down the other block from me. I'm not sure, any of you, all of you know the Roundhouse in Tensford?
Yeah.
Well, it's a roundhouse, okay? It is absolutely and utterly round. And 10th and Irving. You go down there, you can't miss it. I've been active in preservation, well, since I retired about 10 years ago. And so one thing that I regularly do is to, as a volunteer, to research the history of some building or other if a community organization asks for me to do it. And then I write up the history and write up the application. I brought a copy of the Roundhouse application here. And I can't submit this, okay? It has to be submitted by a community group, by an ANC, by the owner of the building. You can't just like any schmo write this stuff and send it to the city. It has to go through an established organization. There's one of these appointed advisory boards, the Historic Preservation Review Board, which meets once a month, and they consider nominations. And if they vote yes, the building's given protection. If they vote no, the building has no protection. Sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other. A building can be nominated for the exterior, or perhaps the exterior and some parts of the interior, like some roofs. In DC now, which has pretty strong laws to protect our old buildings, out of the, I don't know, probably several hundred buildings that are given protection, there are only 12 or 13 with any interior protection. And the nomination for the Roundhouse is only the exterior of the building. It has nothing to do with what goes on inside the building, it has nothing to do with the color of the building, it has nothing to do with the gardens, any of that stuff. I wrote the nomination because I've loved that house since I first moved in, like everybody. And I talked several times with Mrs. McKinney when she lived there. She said, Mrs. McKinney, if you'd like me, she loved the house, okay? She really wanted to stay the way it was. I said, Mrs. McKinney, if you'd like me to write the nomination, I'll be happy to do it. She said, no. She was afraid if it became an historic landmark, a whole bunch of tourists would come and take photographs of her house, which I don't think. Anyway, so I just always said, bless her heart, someday Mrs. McKinney will, well, let's just say not be in the house. And then at that point, I'm going to write the nomination before some developer buys it and smacks it down. And that's what happens. Mrs. McKinney passed on, and so I went down to the library and started researching the house. And in the meantime, the developer who bought it found that it's so small that he couldn't possibly redo it and sell it the size it was. So, in the meantime, I'm a volunteer at the citywide organization of DC Preservation League. And I submitted the nomination to the Preservation League, which has the status to submit nominations, and that's what the Preservation League does. And it went through the committee and all that stuff. And the Preservation League went to the developer and said, we have a nomination here, and we are about to submit it, but we'd like to talk with you first. Well, first he had some steam come out of his ears, that always happens. And then, before submitting the nomination, the Preservation League and the developer made an agreement that he could expand the building, but he had to keep the round shape. Whether he would have done that otherwise, I don't know. But when the Preservation League is standing there threatening to put the nomination in, developers negotiate. And so this, by the way, fairly regularly happens, that the developer got to expand. If anybody's looked at it, you notice that it's sort of like it just got steroids and grew in the back a little bit. It's not, it's sort of like not exactly round, it's sort of partially round. But he couldn't have done that if the nomination had been submitted, because when the nomination is submitted to the city, boom, it's given protection until the Preservation Board hears the case. If the Preservation Board hears the case and says no, protection disappears, he tears it down the next day. But the Preservation League negotiated, in other words, to allow him to expand the house in the back the way it is, and sort of largely keep the feel of the roundhouse. And now the developer and the Preservation League together have submitted the nomination. So that's where it is. In the meantime, the developer sold the house to a lady, and I found out he didn't tell her that there was a preservation nomination, but anyway, that's between them. I talked with the lady. At first she thought she couldn't put window flowers outside her windows, or she couldn't, I said, no, you can do all that stuff. It doesn't do that. And besides, she loves the house the way it is. I don't know, I see her every so often. I've never actually said, are you going to oppose this at the review board, but I don't think she is. Anyway, that's what it is. And so this would make the roundhouse a DC landmark, and it would preserve the outside more or less the way it is. Again, I'm not talking the gardens, I'm not talking the little garage that's in the back of it. She can take that down, that's not part of the nomination, it's not as historic like the house is. And at the hearing in October, there will be anybody that wants to go there and support it or speak against it is welcome to do that. You just get on the agenda. You can send a letter if you can't be there, but also the ANC is one organization that is always asked to give an opinion, and so that's the story. And let me say, if anybody has any questions about the roundhouse, everything that there is to know, which is not all that much, I've got here, and that's where we are.
Before I do the question, I'll take it from the
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Was the owner of the house invited to this meeting tonight?
I didn't know about that. I knew nothing about an owner, so no.
So she wasn't invited, okay.
No, we didn't know about it.
Is the owner in favor of the historic preservation?
Well, as I say, I don't know. When I first talked with her, she was like nervous about it because she didn't know what it meant. And then after I explained that it's not this horrible thing that she had expected, she seemed a little bit happier with it. But that was actually several months ago. I have this habit of kind of going up when people move to the neighborhood, just introducing myself and saying hi. And I just saw her walking in the house, and I said hi. And then, I've seen her since then, but I don't really know quite. I was told by the director of the Preservation League at a meeting last week that there would be, she is not aware of any opposition to it now, but I cannot speak directly.
I'm sorry, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. So two things. One, this was something that was already put into motion prior to the current homeowner being in the house.
Yeah.
And she was not given the information when she purchased the home, was she or was she not?
I was told that the developer did not. She said the developer didn't. The man she bought it from developer didn't say anything.
Okay, so with that being said, and her being the actual owner of the home, do you think it's not fair to really have her take from her something written or something that can be submitted to the commissioner? Because right now, what I'm hearing is that basically it's one-sided. This is something that, you know, people came up with, and this is what we decided we were gonna do, and she was left out of the.
Well, that's your doing, not mine.
No, that's
okay?
fair.
I
I
mean, if
understand,
you-
that's fair. No,
Yeah,
that's
if
fair.
you wanna contact her, I just got an invitation and I came.
No, just so I can be
Right.
clear.
Yeah,
Okay, thank
I
you.
mean, that's for you all to feel, whether, if you feel comfortable in making a statement to HPRB, the Progressive Review Board, or if you feel not comfortable in making a statement, or if you feel you need to have some other, I mean, I don't know, that's your business.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Because I want to just ask Mr. Wetzel, I just wanted to.
But I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, because I feel very uncomfortable that if I owned a house and someone came back and told me that it was a historical house, and those of you who've been around historical houses know how much the restrictions are what you can do and when you can do it for the rest of whatever. So, I mean, I'm very, I understand you on your own deciding to do something, but I think that is kind of dangerous for the community to have someone to decide what they think is historical for somebody else's house. And if it's not your house, I'm saying personally for me, I wouldn't care. I don't want anybody making a decision about my house. And I just think that is something that if we'd known about the owner, we wouldn't have invited the owner tonight. We just didn't know about the owner.
Of course you know about the owner.
I didn't know about the owner.
You know the address of the house.
No.
You
So
know
I
the
didn't know, I thought you owned the house.
It says here, 1001, my address is.
Just whenever we're ready, I can address the questions. I'm sorry. Mr. Webster, first of all, thank you very much. I do have the application in front of me. And according to the application, I know that our ANC received the first application in January. And then we received the notice of hearing in August. The application actually lists, which is why when I contacted you, it said that the property owner is Ditto Residential. And so when I sent you the email, I asked you, would you and Ditto Residential as the entities, because it says here that they're the owners as of 12/1/2012. And it says that you, name and title of authorized representative is Martin Ditto. So it is completely untrue that this ANC knew of anyone else other than the name that I included on the email invitation to you. And you did mention that Ditto would not be present.
Ditto was the owner at the time.
I understand, but
Since it was sold.
we had no information that there was a new owner since then. So we're dealing with the application that we received dated August 30th, and that's what we're dealing with. So specific to the application that we have, I do want to ask you, you said that you had initiated, most of what you said is very new to us because it doesn't, none of that's in the application. So you initiated this application on your own, yes?
Yes.
Yes,
I
okay.
mean, yes, I wrote it.
Yes.
And then I took it to the DC Preservation League,
Yes, sir.
which is, I mean, this is commonly how these things are done. And the league, there was a committee that considered it, and then the board considered it,
Yes.
and the DC Preservation League decided that the building was worth nominating. So the Preservation League submitted the
Yes.
application with Ditto. It was jointly submitted.
Okay, you did say earlier though, and did I mishear you when you said that when Ditto found out that you actually submitted the application, that they were upset,
No, we didn't submit it.
that you were,
When
maybe I
it-
misheard you, I thought
When it was ready to submit.
when it was ready.
Oh, sure, the builder, if somebody's rebuilding
Yeah.
a building, they always, I mean, that's just sort of normal. But then they negotiated together and they found a way of expanding the building
Yes.
that left the historic part of it there,
Yes.
but allowed Ditto to get his extra room
Okay,
and to sell it for the money, for what he wanted.
okay, and I'm just, am I misreading on the form where it says, and it doesn't have a page number on it, that the form was prepared by you, Hayden and Wetzel, and Peter Sefton of the DC Preservation League, and the date of this preparation was October 19th, 2011?
Probably was, I did most of
Probably
it,
was.
Peter probably added something.
Okay. All right, okay. And then the last thing, it does say that the architectural style, that's the category that you want the board to consider in terms of making it a landmark based on the architectural style of the octagonal review? Is that?
It's being nominated on the basis of the architecture.
Okay.
It's not, in other words, you can nominate it because some famous person lived there, but no famous person lived there.
Okay.
Or you can nominate it because it's some famous thing happened there and that didn't happen. In
Okay.
this case, it's just the architecture,
Okay.
is the whole question.
It's the whole question, yes, and you're right, you do list that here, the statement of significance, and there are all those categories.
Yeah.
And it says the area of significance that you cite is the architecture, and specifically that the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or represents the work of a master or possessor. Would you mind just giving us a sense of what that means architecturally of the post-Civil War octagonal revival? I know that you're DC preservation, and so I'm not, and I'd be interested in hearing about that.
Well, from in the 1840s,
Yes.
there was a guy, and I only remember this because I just read it coming back. here. I mean,
Me too.
You know,
Right,
there was a guy named Fowler
right.
who was, he was an amateur architect, and he was also sort of a crackpot type, as I understand. But he wrote a book that octagonal houses. Houses of 8 sides were very healthy houses, and they had a lot of fresh air, and they had a lot of light, and they didn't have these corners you had, the street. And also they tuned into the universal energy. He had some kind of strange ideas. Anyway, his book actually went around, and there were about 1,000 octagonal houses built from the mid-1840s to about 1860. It was like one of these little, tiny little trends in houses. Well, after 1860, it died down. And now, if you get an octagonal house from that early period, this is like there are only maybe a few hundred of them left. But they're all very distinct shapes. I mean, they're sort of weird shapes. People built them, they built them high, they built them out, they built them with fancy things on them. But they died down. There was a revival of octagonal design, maybe in the 1890s, but it was a very, very small thing. It wasn't big enough that it really is. There are about 17 or 18 houses that we know of from this later period that picked up the octagonal design, and the roundhouse would be one more. So it's a very rare example of a revival of a sort of kooky style of housing from 50 years earlier.
Okay, and can you speak to then the current construction? Because I know I've been in my house 15 years. When I moved in, the roundhouse literally was brown all the way around,
That's exactly
and yellow and green.
Yeah.
But now, and you do reference that, the architectural design from 2012, and how the back of the house,
Yeah.
that construction, does that, it looks new, yeah, I
Well, I mean,
understand.
that'll be a question, because
No, I understand,
no,
yeah.
the Historic Preservation Review Board,
Right,
see, this says, unless this was changed before it was submitted, because this was what I sent to the DC Preservation.
yeah, I think it's the same thing.
I mean,
Yeah, I
but
think-
this says it's in exactly its old shape. Well, now it's like
No, it doesn't
it's
say that.
ballooned out in the
Yeah,
back.
it-
Okay, so, I mean, the Historic Preservation Review Board could turn the house down because it's not perfectly round anymore.
right.
I don't know, I mean, that's their decision.
I understand, yeah.
We ask the question, and they make the decision. They say yes or no.
Okay, so I just wanted to focus on, the classification is based on the architectural premise of the revival octagonal, very quirky style that happened in the mid-19th century, and then it didn't really pan out. I think in your application says there's only one octagonal house in DC, but that the majority of them are in the Midwest.
Of the old ones.
The old ones.
Yeah, and there is, of course, also an earlier octagon house, which is
Right.
like a famous old place, but that's not from this period, and they're really not very related to each
Oh,
other.
all right. I have no more questions about this. I think you've given certainly some insight about the new owner and the fact that that owner does not know. And so there's information in this application.
I mean, that's, the
No,
commission
I
has to,
understand, and I do want the public to be aware, and this is standard for any government agency, The second paragraph of the cover letter that we received from the DC Office of Planning says, the board's hearing, which is October 24th, 2013 at 9 a.m., is open to all interested parties or persons. Advisory neighborhood commissions or public and governmental agencies, property owners, and interested organizations or individuals are invited to testify before the board. Written testimony or comments may also be submitted to our office prior to the hearing, preferably at least a week prior, to reach the board members in a timely manner for greater effectiveness. All filings with the board should be sent to the address below. Advisory Neighborhood Commission comments on whether a property merits designation are given great weight by the board. And that's why we wanted Mr. Wetzel to come and speak to the community. Does anyone in the audience, in the community, have any other comments or questions about it?
Three quick ones. When was the house built? What are the effects of the status, if she gets the status? And the third question is, when is the board to rule on this?
Well, to be honest, as soon as I write them, when I finish these things, they sort of go out of my head. So if you want to know when it was built, I have to take a quick look myself. So
It's in 1901.
1901, okay, that's, yes, it was built in 1901. It was almost the first house on that block. It was by far, it was the most expensive house that was built down there. My guess that the guy who bought that larger piece of land thought if he built a large house, he'd start to get wealthy people who moved down there. No wealthy people ever did move down there. The second question was,
What will the effect of the status be on the house?
it has nothing to do with the yard or the planning, it has nothing to do with the color of the house. Basically, if a building has landmark status, if you want to do something that requires a building permit, and the permit office sees that address and it's on the list of, then the permit is routed through the Historic Preservation Office. And they say, this is allowable, or this is, we have to talk with you to make sure that this is gonna, it largely preserves the appearance of this house from the street.
The last question was, when would the board be to hear this? And this is not necessarily for you, but I would hope that the property owner does know when that date is.
Right, absolutely. And given that, I'm going to actually go and meet with that property owner just to get a sense. I know.
She's very nice.
Oh, no, I'm sure she is, I'm sure. But there are some implications of listing of properties in a national register on historic places. And that was included in the application. And it's a page and a half of, eligibility for cracks, for tax credits. But there are some restrictions on certain things, and I'm just concerned that an application was submitted unbeknownst to a property owner, and that just causes me concern. And then it certainly raises the criterion of architecture. If the classification was based on the full house being round without the 2012 renovations, now it's changed. And certainly in the application, Mr. Wetzel says that the back is not really that visible to the public space. But if you drive at 10th and Urban, you can certainly see the back. And it looks like two different houses. So I have no more comments.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One option is, like, if you want to get something on historic, an item, a house to be an item on the historic register,
Yes.
you can do the federal thing, but you can also do the city historic. The city.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Maybe like look at both options and maybe suggest both options to her or something.
Yeah. If that's what she wants.
Generally, if a building is accepted by the city will then automatically send it to the Federal Register. The Federal Register really does nothing for it. It's just a listing. The thing that has effect on it is the local listing in DC.
Yes, sir. Don't you think the contractor took the historical character out of the house by implementing a contemporary repair or renovation to it?
I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of historic buildings that have had similar things done.
Well, with the cedar shingles being removed and
Well, I mean, that's I
the
guess,
wooden, the natural wooden deck
my feeling is that's
being
really
altered.
well, that's a decision that the Preservation Review Board. I mean, that's
I've
a
been
decision
through them, and
you
it's
make.
difficult to
Yeah. I mean, I
to
guess.
get them to buy a modern renovation.
Then they turn it down, then, you know? Who
Yes.
knows?
And Mr. Weston, you do live on in the 1000 block of Brookland, don't you?
No, I'm on the other side of the block.
Oh,
Thank you, very much.